morning, everyone. My name is Ellen Brzozowski. I'm the Executive Director for New Canaan Cares, and I'm going to let Jackie introduce herself.
And I'm Jackie DeLuey. I'm the Youth and Family Services Coordinator for the town of New Canaan, and I chair actually our New Canaan Coalition around prevention.
And you're also, you're a consultant for the preschool?
Oh, I am.
I know.
I have so many good roles. I didn't want to bombard too much time. I am a social service consultant for, I believe it's 9 nursery schools in the community, and there may be a couple of more, but I see some familiar faces in the room, so good to have you.
Yes. All right, so welcome to our talk this morning, and so we're going to try to make this as interactive as possible as well, so we get your ideas about positive discipline, but I think the topic resonates with people. It's, we all want to have sort of this loving, kind environment in our homes, peaceful environment, but we also need to be firm. So how do you negotiate those two things? And so that's what we'll talk about today. And so I'm going to do 2 very small activities just to get us started, to sort of put us in the framework and the frame of mind for today. So I'm just going to ask you to turn to a partner, so just get into a pair, and this is going to be a quick activity. So if you have somebody close to you, even if you're, you have 3 people around you, but just try to find somebody that you can work with, and you can observe if you don't have a specific pair. All right. So I'm going to ask one person in the pair to make a fist. Just one, so just decide who's going to do it, all right? All right, and then the other person, and you can be the other person, is going to try to open the fist. Make the other person open the fist, all right? So just try as hard as you can. Okay, all right, that's good, all right. So when I said you're going to try to get the other person to open the fist, did anybody... How did people feel when they were the person who was making the fist?
Hold it tighter.
Hold it tighter. You're going to resist, right? As hard as you can. And what about the people who were trying to open the fist?
We'll force it.
You were trying to force it, right? And did you feel frustrated that you couldn't get it open? I mean, it's a very short time. We didn't do it for too long, but what did you think? It was hard, right? It wasn't an easy thing. So sometimes this is what happens when we're dealing with our toddlers and our young children, right? We get into this battle that we're trying to force something to happen that they don't want to happen, so they pull in tighter and we try harder, and the frustration level just on cue. It just goes up and up and up, and it ratchets up. So did anybody, when I said try to get the other person to open their fist, did anybody ask the other person to open their fist? You did, good. School teachers in the room, yeah. So sometimes it's just a matter of asking, right? Instead of trying to force. So it's not always that easy, but you get the idea of what I'm trying to say. Okay, so now this one is just for you to do at your seat. Okay, place your hands on your knees. Take a deep breath in, and just let it out, exhale. And now make a circle with your index finger and your thumb. And now place the circle on your chin. All right, so look around the room. How many have it on their chin and how many have it on their cheek? So who listened to what I said? So a few of you listened, and how many just did what I did? A lot of us, right? Okay, so a lot of times, which is more powerful, what you say or what you do? So kids are watching us, right? And they're modeling our behavior. So that, and we're going to talk a lot about that today. So that was just a little example of how you can see, what you say sometimes isn't as important as what you do. And it's just the way our brains work. And so there was a psychologist named Jean Piaget who studied a lot on early childhood. And he was talking about what a preschooler knows. When you say the word know, what does that mean to a preschooler? Like, they don't really have the same concept of no as even a 6 or 7-year-old does. So their brain development is just not at the same place. So it's really an abstract concept, and it's really in opposition of their developmental needs at this age, because they are trying to explore their world, figure out how they fit in the world, and sort of be autonomous. So no is a direct opposition for all those tasks that they're trying to do developmentally. And so Jackie's going to talk about how to try to turn those no's into yeses. But they don't understand cause and effect. And that really sometimes doesn't even develop until they're 10 years old. So when you think about that, and he did an experiment with young children, and he took 2 balls of clay that were the same size, and he said to a 3-year-old, are these the same size? And they agreed they were the same size. And then he smashed one of the balls of clay, and he said, are they the same size now? And they said no. They don't have the capacity to realize, if you ask a 6-year-old, they would have said yes, and probably would have been able to tell you why. But a 3-year-old says no, it looks different to them, so it's different. So I think if we understand where they are in terms of their brain development, we're gonna understand and lower maybe our expectations of their behavior as well. So I'm just gonna do one other thing to sort of give you an idea of brain development and where the brain is. And this is not only just for young children, it's for us as well. So this is Dan Siegel, he's a psychologist, and he has a model of the brain as a fist, and some of you may have seen me do this because I do this a lot when I talk, and I do this a lot for teenagers too, to sort of understand our stress response. But, so if you look at your hand as the brain, and this is the brain stem here, and this is your sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight, flight, or freeze. That's when we get stressed, that's what goes into the mode. So that's here, that's in the deep part of our brain. And then this is the amygdala here, the thumb, and the amygdala is where our emotions lie. And that's really sort of the primal part of our brain that develops really quickly. And then this part, if you put your fingers over that thumb, is the prefrontal cortex. And that's where the CEO of the brain, logic, reasoning, ability to think through problems, problem solving, and that's the part, of course, that develops last. So we have all this primal part, that's our stress response, our emotional development, and then the prefrontal cortex. But even in young children, they have that. But what happens when somebody gets stressed or frustrated or angry is that amygdala lights up, and it flips our lid. For adults too, not just for kids. So where did that prefrontal cortex go? It's gone. It's offline. So that amygdala is ruling the world right now. So we have to try to calm that amygdala down so we can put the prefrontal cortex back in line and use that logic and reasoning. So say your child flips their lid, and then you might flip your lid, right? And is this the right time now to try to reason and logic and figure out and problem solve? If you're both in this flipped lid state, no, right? We do it, right, because we're just trying to get our kids back in line, we're in the grocery store, whatever's happening. But as you can see, and it's mirror neurons, so if your child flips their lid, you might flip your lid, or the opposite. If you flip your lid, the child is gonna flip their lid. So they're mirroring, they're modeling what you're doing. So you have to find a way to get that amygdala back in line to then, and we're going to talk about ways to do that today. But for yourself, there's things like deep breathing. There's, just taking the time out, and we'll talk about that today too. But so I just wanted to put it in the framework of understanding the brain and where kids are.
Okay. So first I want to say to you guys, we need to go easy on ourselves. I mean, parenting is the hardest job. It really is. So I think an important thing you could start your day with is set an intention for that day with your family. This is going to be a positive day, however that looks for you. And if by 10 a.m. it's gotten a little off track, set it again. I mean, there's never, a time where you can't get it back. I think we just really want to have those positive intentions every day, and it does work. So I'm going to go through a list. It's not all encompassing. You don't have to be doing this as you walk out of here. A lot of you probably know this, but these are just, we all need reminders. I need reminders. So I think this is really just a nice little reminder to all of us. And I will give some examples, but at the end, if you feel like you needed maybe more of an example with something, then we can go over that. Feel free to chime in at any point. I think we'll hold questions though till the end, just so we have time to do that. Okay, so it's about 7 tips. One is to offer choices. So kids, especially under 5, don't really have power in their day. They're told, where to go, what to do. But if you give them choices, it really does, elicit a response that if you just give a command, you're gonna hear no. So if you give a choice, it will eliminate maybe the power struggle, and that's what you're hoping for. It tends to avoid complete defiance, and again, it elicits cooperation. And an example of that is if it's a red or blue crayon. I mean, anything in your day. If it's before bed, brush your teeth first, or get your pajamas on. I mean, really, you get the gist of that, but that does really, we all sort of want choices in life. We feel like,
And I think it's gotta be choices that you're comfortable with, either choice they make, right? So, if you give them a choice,
Yes.
I wouldn't give them too many, right?
Not too many.
But like if you're going to do an errand and you have to go to the dry cleaners and the bank, you might even say to them, where do you wanna go first? And if it doesn't matter to you, right, then you say that. And again, I think it's just giving choices, cause that just helps them feel a little more control.
Yes, and I think you'll just, like we said, have just a more positive outcome, and that's what you're looking for. Creating a yes environment. I do believe we hear the word no constantly, and with kids you want to use that sparingly. They tend to pay attention when you use the word no less frequently. Obviously for safety reasons, you need to obviously, if you need to shout or something like that to get their attention if there's traffic or a car is coming, but a yes environment does really work. They want to safely explore their surroundings to discover what their world is all about. You don't want to inhibit their curiosity, but by reprimanding them for touching everything or in your house or where they go, I think that's how they really learn and explore. So it's important to use that word sparingly. An example of that would be like to even just say, yes, it's time to clean up. Yes, I will help you. Yes, you can leave your blocks out. And yes, we can read an extra story. Just practicing that word yes really goes a long way. So anything to add?
Yeah, I just think trying to reframe it, so yes, it's time to clean up, instead of saying, and I think you'll probably get to this a little bit, but instead of saying, or validating, I know it's really hard to want to move right now or to want to stop playing, and yes, I'll help you.
Right, right. Yeah, definitely, I think that, they need the validations. The third would be like teaching emotions. It's never too early to start teaching your kids to express their emotions when they're not able to comprehend what's going on. It's a very common reason why they act out. Ellen mentioned Dr. Dan Siegel. He's a neuropsychiatrist and a New York Times bestselling author, but he really helped with the emotional intelligence work, but also it's been emphasized in our school system here by Dr. Mark Brackett from Yale. At the New Canaan Public Schools, that kids need to be able to name it, to tame it. So if they, and that's why emotion charts work, and I think one of the things for younger children is to create a simple emotions chart. I know the kids in my life love, you can get them, they're magnets on your fridge and they can move how they're feeling each day. But even, this was a great example that I found out there, take picture of your child and those emotions, and then hang that up for them, and then they know when they're when they're feeling a certain way, and then that's fun for them to have their pictures of them making that emotion, and that can, because obviously when they're not able to read, they can identify the emotion that they're having, and that helps them. When they're older, obviously you want to kind of have sort of a feeling vocabulary list. That really helps them to appropriately express themselves. This is a huge one, but we probably know this, but we forget. Children seek negative attention, so a lot of times we need to ignore that bad behavior. Again, not a safety, time when they're not being safe, but ignoring that bad behavior, we actually take away the fun in that, and it reduces the incentive to engage in that behavior again. And I know that's really tough for people, but try that next time and actually reinforce maybe the positive behavior, like say siblings are kind of arguing over something, let them figure it out. But when they're getting along, you want to run in and sort of say, I love how you guys are, playing so well together, and really reinforce that. They'll want more of that. A lot of the time, it's that they want your attention. And sometimes when we're busy and we're going through our day, they get it when it's negative behavior, that they're, expressing. So, I know it's easier said than done.
Tracy Masella talks about
Yes.
that too, and she says, oftentimes when they're playing well and they're playing quietly, that's when you're like, oh, I can answer an email, I can make a phone call. And then they start arguing or something happens, and that's when you go in. What's going on? You know? And so she said, unless there's bloodshed, just let them try to figure it out. But if they're playing nicely, go in there and sort of join them and say, oh, this is so great, I love it when you play this way, or I love it when you share your toys, and then spend a few minutes with them. It doesn't mean you have to spend the whole
Right.
time with them when they're playing, but giving them that attention when the behavior's positive, you want to reinforce that
Right.
positive.
But I think going back to our brain development,
Yeah.
we probably tend to notice the negative stuff
Yeah,
first.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
We all do it.
Now, this one kind of is just fun, and I think you can get bigger kids to join in on this, but it's using, and obviously this works for younger kids, but you can do it with older as well, but using like fictional third-party mediators, so kind of like with little kids, maybe a puppet show to model, you know, positive behavior. You see this in schools when they come in and talk about like healthy relationships or stuff like that. But you could make them, have the kids help you, again, back to choices, come up with some ideas that you can make puppets out of spoons or paper plates. But one parent said that they've used it at supper time to model positive eating habits through the puppet, and everyone laughs and everyone's having fun, but it's really positive. Now, your older kids are probably not gonna love this as more, and that's why like news stories, current events, those can be mediators to facilitate sort of those difficult conversations with them around things like that. But I think try to have, you know, and older siblings would probably love to do this for their younger siblings. So I think that's a fun one that, you know, you definitely can use. The next one is playing detective, and it's kind of like figuring out, we all would like to play detective, I think, for a little while, but figuring out why your child is acting out. Are there specific times of day that their behavior is challenging? Could other children or adults near them be triggering this? Are there environmental conditions? Is it too warm, too cold, too crowded, too much noise, too chaotic? Any of those circumstances be a factor. Is there an illness, allergies, change in diet, medication, any change in the household, hunger, change in a caregiver, fatigue, change in a routine? I know that's a lot, but instead of, I think, going in, reprimanding, maybe figure out what's, you know, going on before you want to find out the source of the tantrum before jumping to conclusions. Circumstances around us can definitely influence our behavior. So when we examine the outside issues, we may avoid those future outbursts, which I think, you know, is just important. And if you did keep a journal, you might want to look at like what happened before, what was the behavior, and like what was the consequence of that, and maybe chart what time of day that is, because you might notice that, I mean, with kids it could be simple as like blood sugar, you know, hungry, tired is a huge one, even for adults. And then with older children, you'd want to involve them in the process, so have them help, you know, you figure out what's bothering them. So I definitely think that just these obvious things can be really, really helpful. The hugest one, I think, is being consistent. I think that one example I'll give, and I've learned this more recently, because we all need help with this positive discipline stuff, but when you threaten, like, I'm turning around, we're going back home, we're not gonna go, when your whole day is planned around that activity, and you probably know that that's not gonna happen, but you really wanna do that when you can. And I think, you know, if it's you have an outing to go to the library with your toddler and something's going on with them, we'll try again another day, and, you know, head back home. You really will notice that that they want to really do what it is that you're doing. It could really change the behavior, but that is a huge one, and I think we are not consistent, and I think it's why you need to be with your discipline. Your child needs to know what is and isn't acceptable, and they judge that by what was and wasn't okay yesterday and the day before. If they're not getting a consistent message, they do not know how to behave. That can leave your child feeling confused and insecure, and we want to avoid those feelings. Try to keep the same schedule every day. That means having regular nap times, meal times, bedtimes, as well as when your child is free to have fun. When you do make a change, it's helpful to warn that child in advance. If something's, you know, going to be changing in their routine, you want them to prepare for that. If there's going to be a different routine. One example that I had was a mom had asked her daughter to be in her aunt's wedding, and she was like, no way, I refuse. Well, she had no idea like what that entailed. She got to get a dress, what building, where it would be held. So I think sometimes you may just get, no, they completely refuse, but when you explain to them what that might entail, down to, again, giving them choices about what they can wear, what they can pick out, what they can do. You're gonna honestly have, a better outcome if you do that. I won't get into that, 'cause, I think it's a little heavy. And then, once again, children thrive on routine. It's what we were saying, if they know what's coming, they're less likely to act out. And then a fun one could be, which a lot of you probably do, you want to divert and channel the behavior. Diversion is a great tool for young children. Little ones have a short attention span. You can use this to your advantage. You may distract them from whatever they are fussing about. Instead of giving in, find something new to do or to talk about that might interest your child. We all know this with another object. Kids, obviously, sharing sometimes becomes difficult. So if they get something new, and I'm sure all of you, the witching hour is not a fun time, but if your child starts, getting to you, take them to a different room, going out for a walk, just fresh air sometimes, I think just is great. So utilize that while you can before we have snow on the ground. And then just some last, a few reminders. Here's with older kids. You may need to be more strategic about this. If you get the constant complaints of your child being restless, distracting the class from his teacher, obviously enrolling them in sports or burning off some of that energy to channel some of that really does help. They don't have to do sports. It can be art projects, running in the yard. I mean, has anyone taken a kid to an open field? They just love to just run, and it does not seem as fun to us. And then I did just some few last reminders. They were just good things. I've probably said some of them, but huge one that Ellen and I think our community is really working on this, but as parents, we just need to regulate our own emotions, because a lot of times they might be experiencing what we are, and that's sometimes why, I think we have a visitor. So I give some examples on how we can regulate our own emotions. We can do some deep breathing, meditation, exercise. I think is a huge one that helps me tremendously, but whatever works for you, use. Just try to resist alcohol as that stress relief. One, it doesn't work, and two, your kids are watching you and they're seeing that, and they think that that's what they want to do when they're older. So I think that that's an important one, to catch yourself. It'd be better to just go out and take a walk. So again, defiance really is a relationship problem. So when your child is being defiant, instead of that turning into a power struggle, you want to strengthen that relationship. You want to figure out how to pull them closer. And I think something I had learned, instead of a timeout, because they're negative and they're maybe a time in. And I know I've talked to lots of parents that say, that's the last thing I want right now is to spend that alone time. And if you can't do it right at that moment, cool off first. I suggest regulating your emotions, going back to that. But that time in could really be about relaxing, pulling them closer. Maybe it's a hug, your calm presence. If you show them that you're calm, they'll come to a calm state. Some kids like to be cuddled, some don't, so you want to figure out what works for them. One of these is open up a conversation by using words like, it looks like taking turns is not working well today, or you seem frustrated that Sarah has more blocks than you. A negative, I missed this part in this, but a negative part of the timeouts are really like kids, it erodes their emotional intelligence. So it's actually doing a disservice to what we're learning in schools and how we want to name it to tame it. And the punishment, it just leads to humiliation and shame. And I think it's just the worst things for kids to feel. And then I went over the tantrums arguments. There, it could be, again, but I did add, it could be lack of sleep, hunger, stress, overstimulation, too much technology. Has anyone seen their child become sort of in like zombie mode? Their head almost starts to look like these screens here. Or maybe they just need attention. So I think it's just really kind of tuning into what's going on with them. And their behavior may be dramatically, improved by a snack, a break, taking some time in nature to run. So the last is just reinforce the good behavior you see. You can always, for yourself and your child, offer a do-over. Let's do this over. Mom and I, we didn't have this great morning, let's do this over, it's okay to go back. I think they need sort of that dialogue. Try to delay your reaction, especially if it's gonna be a negative one, and then model for them how to share, how to take turns, whether it's through puppets or you're doing it yourself. I think throughout your day, by showing them, they will really remember that you paid for someone in line or let someone, get in front of you. It really goes a long way. All right, so I am done. I didn't use up all the time.
No. So I just wanted to piggyback on what Jackie just said about you can always have a do-over. Parenting is really hard. It's not an easy thing, but you will always have an opportunity to do it again the next day, the next afternoon, the next hour, right? You will always get another chance. And I think, especially if you've had an interaction that you don't feel so good about, I think that's what Jackie said is so important, that you can apologize to your child. And a lot of people think, well, I'm the parent, I have to be up here, or I'm the teacher, I have to be here. But it models for them that you can make repair, that you can ask for forgiveness, and that you can do it again, and you can have a different outcome the next time around. So I think that's, really hard just saying, I really didn't like how that went, and I'm sorry I yelled at you. Let's think about how we can do that better, or can I have a hug, or let's give each other a hug, if that is something that works for you and your child. So, and then I think the positive timeout, it's like a time in, and that's on this handout that we gave you, but they do talk about sort of, if your child is old enough, creating a space together. So it's not like a chair in the corner, but it's actually a space that's comforting to them. So it could be, and that's sort of counterintuitive because you think, well, they did something wrong, so they should be punished, right? But at that age, especially knowing what we know about their brain development and where they are, and that we need to be really kind and set this loving atmosphere, yet be firm. I mean, we're not saying let them get away with everything, but if, we're looking at their behavior as underlying something's off, like that they're hungry, they're tired, whatever it is, they're frustrated. And so using that and saying, okay, let's create a space where when you're feeling all of these angry, frustrated, tired, you can go to this space. Maybe it has their favorite blanket or their favorite stuffed animal, or just really anything textile, using the senses is really gonna help. So, especially the touch for kids at this age. So that's why stuffed animals, I think, are so important and feel so good for kids, because it's also gets to their sense of touch and it really provides a comfort to them. So having that space that you create together, and you say, do you want to go to your cool down space, even if you call it that, you don't even have to use the words timeout, but like a cool down space or a feel good space where you can try to feel better. And so, knowing and recognizing that you really feel frustrated, you're angry, you pushed your sister, and because you were angry, but pushing isn't okay, do you want to go to your space where you can cool down for a little bit? So it's not like, go sit over there and think about what you did. It's go over there and really try to, regulate your emotions. Now, you're not saying that to them, they don't understand that, but that's the message you're giving them, that, you had this emotional response, and emotions are okay, but we can't have this behavior happen, but can you go over to that space and use that as a way to calm down? Because you're teaching them then to really regulate and to know that they're having an emotional response, and like Jackie was saying too, making that emotion chart, so you can even have them when they're calmed down, because the amygdala's here and the prefrontal cortex is gone. So when they've used that calm down space, even using that emotional chart to say, point to what were you feeling that when you were pushing your sister, or when you took the toy, and have them label that emotion.
Does anyone use emotion charts? I'm sure you do in classrooms, but at home, does anyone? All right, we're gonna start.
Might be a good way. Visuals
like
are really
get the
great
kids,
for young kids. Yeah.
And
yeah.
for if they're grade school age, maybe they want to draw what those. Get them on an art project of drawing what those expressions could look like.
Yeah. You could even look.
I'm not saying you have to go out and buy
no.
construction paper and get this. They can help you, and they'd probably have really creative ideas. And again, you're giving them options, choices.
Right. And I think when you're involving them in the process, right, they're going to buy into it more.
For sure.
So again, when you're creating this space, this time and space, or whatever it is, if you're letting them help create it, they're going to want to go there to cool down.
But you have to participate in it as well. Like you might have to tell them what your emotions are sometimes and try to regulate those.
Yeah. And I also read an article yesterday, and I will try to post this on our website. On our website, we have a resource page, and I put a lot of these articles on there. So like this handout will be on there, and some other ones. But it was talking about multitasking, and it says multitasking is making parents lose it with their kids. Here's how to break the cycle. So, and that's so hard because we're all so busy, right? And we're always trying, like, I just want to read to you the first paragraph because it's pretty hysterical and it resonated with me. But it's an all too familiar scene in my house. I'm standing at the stove, stirring the mac and cheese while occasionally checking email or text messages on my phone. Meanwhile, my older daughter is at the kitchen table asking for help with her homework, and her sister is in the other room yelling for me to come look at her latest Lego creation. I'm in constant motion, draining the noodles, answering math questions, tapping out texts, and stepping on Legos, right? So can you see it? Can you picture that? We're all there, right? So my tension is rising even if I'm not aware of it, and eventually something's gonna give, and I'm gonna lose it, right? And then we know the mirror neurons, if we lose it, the kids lose it. So the article is really suggesting trying to focus on one thing at a time. And I think especially during that witching hour when you're trying to make dinner, they're trying to get homework done, you may even say to them, okay, I'm cooking dinner for the next, maybe set a timer and say, so you're gonna find something quiet to do, or you're gonna find something to do for this, 10 minutes or whatever it is. And then your full attention is to them. And so the phone is away, the TV's off maybe, whatever it is, and you can give your full attention to the homework or whatever it is that they're dealing with at that time. But nobody's saying it's easy.
No, we're on autopilot a lot of the time.
You may not be able to do it every day, but if you can work that into your week in some ways to try to just focus on one task, even if you have to take 20 minutes and say, okay, this is what we're gonna do, or for the next 20 minutes, I'm yours, what do you wanna do?
And that'll be the time they remember, you know what I mean, and the time they cherish. And again, like, you don't have to do it if you can't offer it every day.
No,
it's when you do, that'll be the times they enjoy the most.
Yeah. And then I'll just, on this handout too, and it wasn't in any particular order from what Jackie was doing, but the say yes, so you do have some of those examples of how to use that yes language. And then number 5 on this handout is set limits, but set them with empathy. So it actually gives you some language to use. So it looks like you wanted your sister to move, so you pushed her. No pushing, pushing hurts. Use your words. So this is, you're actually naming for them what's happening and validating that. You seem pretty angry. That would make me angry too. And we can't hit, that kind of thing. So it's validating the emotional response. And then I think we did most of these other ones. So I'm just gonna do a very short activity, just show you, there's a book called Positive Parenting, and there's something at the back, there's a copy of the book at the back of the table, so you can take a look at that. Unfortunately, we don't have enough copies for everybody, but if you're interested in it, we also have a lending library at the CARES office, which is 91 Elm Street. We're right above the movie theater. So we have a library there, and all these books that are there are available for you to come and take out, to read, and then just return to our library. So please know that that's there as a resource for you as well. But so this is an activity about making a routine chart with your preschooler, all right? And some of you may already have done this, but anybody want to volunteer to be a 3-year-old? And if not, I'll make Jackie be a 3-year-old.
Okay, perfect.
All right. So I'm just gonna... And obviously you don't have to use the whole flip chart idea, but you can have a piece of paper with your child. Just do this at the kitchen table. But again, it's the idea of trying to do it with them. So.
Should I start now, being a 3-year-old?
Yes, you're gonna be kind to me and not be, oh look, you're making so much you just did. See, that was my response. All right, so, yeah, try to turn it and I'll try to sit so I can do it. All right, so I'm gonna make you Jane.
Okay.
My 3-year-old Jane, all right? Okay, so Jane, let's try to think about, what do you need to do to get ready for bed? What do we do when we have to get ready for bed? Tell me everything that we do.
Brush my teeth.
Okay. So I'm gonna write it down as you tell me, okay? All right, what else?
Put my jammies on.
Okay. Anything else?
iPad.
Okay, so the iPad, I know you really want to use the iPad. I know how much you love that iPad. we're gonna put the iPad down here, and we're gonna figure out a time that you can use that iPad, but we can't use it at bedtime, all right? So yes, I know you love that iPad, and yes, we'll figure out a time where you can use that iPad, but it's not gonna be on our bedtime list. And I know it's hard, but we'll think about when you can use it. Okay, what else besides brushing your teeth and putting on your
Reading stories?
Oh yeah, you like reading stories, right?
I like you reading stories.
You like me to read stories, yes, okay. Okay, anything else? No? Okay. I like snuggle time. Do you think, is that all right if I put that on the list? Yes. Okay. Snuggle time.
Hopefully your children are all this easy.
Yeah, right. Right. Jackie's being very kind to me today. All right. So, and if there's anything else that maybe they're suggesting on this list that you don't want on the list, that you think is not conducive to bedtime, then you can make a separate list and say to them, we're gonna work on this and find a place for that activity, but this is not on our bedtime list. And so you show them that you're taking it seriously, you know that they wanna do something, but it's not on the list.
And I think that was a great demonstration. I'm not the 3-year-old anymore, but
that was perfect.
the iPad. No, but I think to show me that she's not saying no. I can get it at a later date. It's just it's not the best thing before bed. I mean, it doesn't help our brains settle down. The light.
Yeah,
there's
blue
just
light
many
has just been shown to
for
keep people
adults.
awake,
If you
so.
can, you shouldn't have your phones in your room. I mean, it's just not helpful for anyone's bedtime. But kids go to bed. Most kids probably go to bed
Yes.
with an iPad.
Or-
And it probably
yeah,
replaces,
yeah.
unfortunately, some of the reading time and the snuggle time.
And, it's for teenagers too, and I know some of you may not be there, but we often tell teenagers, you gotta get that phone or that computer, laptop, whatever, out of your room, and it's a struggle. And I always say this to parents too, try to model that. And it's hard though, especially if you have older kids, and you're waiting for them to come home, and you're like, well, I have to have the phone in my room, how am I,
Right.
But I did just learn about this new, thing where you can override, how you put your phone on silent, or you you put the notifications on off. If you go to your contacts, you can override that for certain people. So for my 2 children, I have that on override. I have to take that off sometimes because they'll call me in the middle of a meeting, like I'll be in a meeting and my phone will go off, and it's not an emergency, they just want me to bring home ice cream. And I'm like, okay, yeah, no, that's not what it's for. But you could put that on at night, so if you have the phone outside your bedroom, you're still gonna hear the phone ring if you have that override on for the certain people that you're worried about. So whether it's parents, that you might have an elderly parent that you're worried about, something like that. So, because I know that's a quandary sometimes. I need the phone because if there's an emergency, but you could still have it right outside your bedroom, and still be able to hear it. So, okay. Oh, Jeannie, there's one more thing that I want to put on here. It's bath time. I know, sometimes you don't really like it. You don't like bath time. I know, sometimes it's hard. But, it's important to keep our body clean. So, Mommy is going to put it on here. Right? All right. Okay. So,
And I'm sure you've all experienced children liking it at one time,
Yeah.
not liking it, it's a chore, they're missing out a fun time, and they don't want to take that back, but it is important.
all right, so Jamie, we have brushing our teeth, PJs, reading stories, snuggle time, and bath time. What order? What do you think should go first?
I think
All right, you want to get bath time over with, right? So we're going to put a 1 next to the bath time. And hopefully if they're learning their numbers, this is also helpful.
yeah.
What else? Brush teeth, PJs,
Brush
reading
teeth.
stories. Okay. Put that 2. PJs, reading stories, snuggle time.
PJs, obviously, I know, but
PJs.
should go in order. Your kids may not
Well,
wanna.
I mean, and it may not matter to you,
Right.
and you
And
may be able
that's-
to give them those choices.
That's true for you, if you can,
Right,
just
if
let
it
that be an
doesn't matter.
easy, you don't want that power struggle,
Reading and snuggle time. Which one do you want to go first?
Reading.
Okay, so reading and then snuggle time. Okay, great. So maybe what we can do is draw pictures of you doing, or I can take a picture of you doing each one of these, and then you want me to take pictures? Okay, and then we'll put the pictures next to each one so you remember, and then at night, I don't have to say, brush your teeth, it's time to brush your teeth. I can just point and say, okay, this is where we are tonight, and you can just go do it. Want to try it? All right. So it's just an example of how you can go through and use.
Does
sort of
anyone
choices.
do anything with routine charts or, yeah?
I have a picture chart for evening and morning. We've got routines on both.
Yeah.
Perfect. And you, is it pictures of them or you kind of
No,
created?
I went to the internet and I found like cute little pictures of,
Great, yeah.
Great. Yep, and I think the more you can involve them in making the chart too, and it doesn't mean, just because you've done it
Colors,
already, you
stickers.
could have them decorate it more, or just something, because again, that makes them own it more. Yeah.
So I've done the routine chart and I found it to be really effective. My problem is how to get them to speed through it. Like, I do a morning chart of things to get ready, but I feel like we're still pop dawdling and we're late all the time. So do you have suggestions on how to keep, not only stick with the order, but try to keep it moving and not get distracted?
Yeah, there was one article that I read about using music as a timer. So if you come up with a playlist for them, or they help you come up with a playlist of some of their favorite songs, so you can say to them, by the time Happy ends, the song Happy, if that's one of them, you should be done brushing your teeth and we should be in bed reading a book. Or in the morning, same thing, by the time this song ends. And, you have to try to get the songs so they're not 5 minutes long, so you're not brushing your teeth for the whole time. But that can be one way that's fun. And again, if they've helped choose the song, then that will, they might buy into it more. And it may take a little time for them to recognize, okay, now the song is ended, I should be moving on. That takes practice, but after a few times, it should kick in.
And I wonder, and this might be hard in your day, but is it they're lingering because maybe they want that extra time with you, so maybe saying, we've got to get through this, because you said it happening in the morning too when you have to get to school, and but maybe we can set aside 10 minutes to do something later, because I think it could just be that they're lingering because it's more time with you, and I don't know if there's other siblings in the home. I definitely, one that works too, I know parents, and I know we have cold winters here, but sometimes walking out with the jacket, in your hand will get them when they realize how cold it is. I know I was raised, you're gonna have the flu if you go out without, with the scared grandmother always, but it's not true, and I think once they feel the cold, they will have that jacket on probably the next time you walk out. Just carry the stuff and just start walking to the car, because I think we all want shoes on and want it all to go perfectly, but I think we can't control all of that, so.
And morning, I think, is particularly tough because you've had the separation of night too, and so kids need the connection in the morning, and it's probably when you have the least amount of time, but if you can try to carve out 5 minutes, even if you hold hands walking down the stairs, or just some kind of connection that you can have, even if it's only a couple of minutes in the morning, that may also help with cooperation, because now they feel like you've connected with them and they're more apt to start their day. It's not foolproof, but it might work. So.
Did we want to open up the question?
This is
No.
just a timer thing. I am by no means an expert on any of this, but.
No, but it's helpful to
Yeah,
have
a few
everyone
years
talk
late
about
on
their
the first one
experience.
right now, but I just got these rainbow colored hourglass timers on Amazon, and they're in all different times, from 30 seconds, you can get it up to an hour. And it's actually been helping with the toothbrush timing was a major issue, and that one, fortunately for me with girls, was pink. For the 2 minutes, but then they can set their own, so I didn't have to keep pushing, I was pushing the microwave timer.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
it's like an alarm clock.
Right.
It's not fun.
Right.
So, and it was annoying for me, so they can kind of control their own time.
That's awesome.
A little bit.
And they're familiar with those from games, so I think it's great.
Yes.
That's
So
great,
it's kind of
actually.
fun. I mean, this was started, the youngest is 3, so I don't know, before that, it would probably have been just like this a lot.
Yeah, right.
It's an option, it's
Yeah.
it's kind of a fun option.
Yeah.
I think sometimes you have to try a lot of stuff before you get to one that works, and that's okay. But Amazon has everything, so.
And not to keep you on the spot, but or asking the child, what would help us kind of move through this quicker, kind of enlist them to kind of help you. I don't know how old they are, but
Yeah, and maybe not in the moment,
No,
but yeah.
not in the moment. Yeah.
I haven't after the fact. I've tried to in the moment, but then I usually get sort of a snotty answer from my 5-year-old.
Yeah.
I bring my children actually back to the chart and then sort of encouraging them to say, okay, which ones have we done? We do, okay, made your bed, check, ate your breakfast, check, and they get excited about having completed
Yes.
that task. So
Yes.
that's kind of how I refocus them, is bringing them back to look at the chart with me, and then just praising them for having done the things they've done so far, and
Absolutely.
just keep it going.
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
great, that's good. I think if you don't, have a chart, but I love that because I feel good about checking things off too, so for them to see that, that's
Yeah,
definitely
absolutely.
good. And then they get the praise for it.
Right, and then you're
And then they're
reinforcing the
incentivized to like do
positive
the next
behavior.
item,
Yeah.
Yes.
and to be all done.
Yes.
That's what they're really excited about.
Any other questions or,
Can this be like not on that topic?
yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
sure.
I am a yeller. My name is Melissa. But I'm like calm. I'm like, okay, it's fine, it's fine. And I actually find that it doesn't start until after like between 3 and 4 for both of my girls. So my 3-year-old's actually not as difficult, and so I'm okay, and then all of a sudden I explode. And I am the type of person who explodes, and then I'm fine, but everybody else is not fine. And there's so much guilt. This is like a multifaceted thing. There's a lot of guilt on my part, but I wonder, like, number one, how do I not blow my lid? Because they don't always let me leave the room to cool down. They will chase after me, bang the door down.
Yes, yes,
Like
yes,
all of
yes.
it. And then the damage that is done from that yelling in that moment, and it can sound like The Exorcist, you know, it's like, or at least it feels that way, you know, and to them it feels that way, because like, I'm their person, you know, so I don't know if there's a way to, I don't know, other than muzzling myself, you know what I mean, like for all the interactions, like what I can really do. I mean, I came from a house of one major yeller. My
Yeah.
mother never did it, she's like this all the time, and I didn't get that. So
You didn't get that
I
gene.
just wonder, like, is there,
Because I do think we take what we've learned, you know, and
From
it,
growing up.
and it might have worked for us, we think, you know, in
I
the
obviously
time.
learned from the louder one.
Yeah.
But I just don't know, and I'm teaching them, and I've seen now them
Their reaction to be-
interacting kind of, I'm like, no, don't say that to each other, like, no, you have to be nice, you have to be, and I just don't know, is there,
I wonder
anyone
if you
do it?
track sort of, you know, because you can always, like we said, go back, and I know you feel like the damage is done, but go back and say,
I don't
I'm not so proud
I
of.
don't think it's permanent damage. You can go back and
yeah,
rip.
but like asking for, I mean, I do ask, I
Yeah,
apologize,
just say-
I ask forgiveness, I explain what happened,
Yeah.
but is there something to do to like
I
put
would
a
try to
pin in
figure
it,
out,
and if,
like,
you know, if I can't like escape.
Yeah.
I would figure out like what's the,
For
you know,
me,
precipitating it,
right.
because you're saying it's around a specific
Yes.
time, maybe they're
It's
not.
like the 7th time I ask, you know, it's not that, that's not necessarily
Right.
a magic
No,
number, it's
but-
like the 7th time that somebody's like,
Pick up your shoe, yeah, the
it's, and
stuff,
it's
yeah.
usually the older one, not the younger one.
Does anyone in the room have successful, like, things that they've done to kind of get, if they were a yeller, a former yeller, anyone? No, because I think figuring out for you what it is, again, asking them maybe, like, what you
Yes.
could do, is I think at that
Yes.
moment when you're really frustrated,
Right.
could you, if you're trying to prepare dinner or sit down with them and play a game, like, just make it fun. Maybe that's the time when you go out for 5 minutes. I think you need to do something that's fun. And I've heard the one where they will chase you, you can't even lock the door, they
Yeah,
will yank on the door.
They've tried to.
Because
like,
I
break-
do think
they're
it's
very
important to
small,
get
and they try
space
to break
yourself, yeah,
Yeah.
but you
Yeah.
probably
But they're
can't
not
do
like
that.
really even bad kid, I mean,
Yeah.
it's like trying to get out the door to go somewhere, and I've done the timers, and I've done everything, and I've laid things out, and I have talked to them about what will make this go faster. I really have done all of those, and I'm like, I did it, I checked, and then it's like 17 things, and I mean, you know, you blow your lid, and not everybody yells, like, it's just a fact, I mean, just
Yeah.
there are people who that's not a part of who they are.
Right. And first of all, nobody's perfect. So we all have to
Right,
be
go
a little
easy
more
on
gentle
yourself,
with
yeah,
ourselves,
going
you know,
back to that.
and not beat ourselves up too much
Yeah.
about it. Because kids will be able to hear you when you say, oh, I didn't love the way I talked to you back then. So, and they will learn from that, definitely. So I wouldn't beat yourself up too much
Yeah.
about it.
And I was gonna say, I do think we live in this, like, perfect sort of where we want, like say you're trying to get somewhere, I think that's, you know, and you're,
On time.
Yeah.
if one of them, you know, if someone doesn't have a shoe, I mean, you just gotta let it go.
Yeah.
It doesn't reflect you, you know what I mean? Like, I think if you can just try to, and I'm not saying you're doing that, but I think that can be, do you have a suggestion for her? Oh, good.
So I have 3 older daughters, ages 12 down, and, you know, we've gone through everything, trying to get to the Nutcracker in their perfect dresses, like, and I've stressed out and yelled. Those are the times when these things, like expectations are really high, to look a certain way or whatever, and I've just found just to let it go.
Yeah.
And you just feel like, you know, the most important thing, more important than being to church on time or school on time, it's just that relationship. And sometimes just saying, okay, we're gonna be late.
That's it.
Okay.
That's kind of, that's the
You're
secret
right.
bullet,
You're
yeah.
right.
That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the most important.
I mean,
guess
the other
maybe-
thing
maybe
for
there's
you-
some deeper psychology.
Yeah.
But I think,
And I don't know
because I do
about,
think we think it reflects on us that,
Yeah,
right,
oh,
yeah.
like somebody's
Exactly.
really saying like, God, that, did you say Mealy, like that Mealy
Right.
family, they can't get, like,
Right.
like, people they're thinking we just pulled in at the nick of time, you know, too, and
Right.
Yeah.
their kids are jumping out of the, I mean, everyone's kind of in the same boat, but I do think the more we
Let it
let
go.
the stuff
Yeah.
go and,
And your soft voice is how my mother spoke.
yeah, that was,
And I wish.
practice that. Wait,
well,
practice
so,
that.
and for you, does the breathing help at all?
I was gonna say, or
So
yoga
even
breath.
when you're in, I'm like having, I've actually developed, I'm trying to treat an anxiety breathing thing that's developed in the last few years, probably because of like all the
Yeah.
stress of the juggling and, you know.
Keeping people
And
alive,
honestly, like
yeah.
being around here, like you have to be, you know, volunteering for 17 things and everybody's different schools and, you know, do this and do that and dinner should be healthy and it should be like this and then the kids are on you and that multitasking story is like our lives, plus
Yeah.
we have to look perfect while we're doing it and don't sweat and and have your makeup on and you know it's just like
And I think the
you know,
yelling is you rebelling. You don't really
it
want
is.
to. You're like, I don't
I
throw the
wish I
papers
could,
up in
no,
the
I
air
wish I was
and let it.
comfortable with just letting it go and letting it all
You'll
hang
get
out
there.
and just you know and I yes that's what it's deep. It's probably the deeper psychology.
but it's-
of,
we're all
I'm yelling.
sort of keeping
I
trying
have
to keep
said
that
to my
together.
older one, I feel like I'm yelling at myself when I'm
I
yelling
think
at
you know, and I think that's what it is. Yeah, I think you're not loving this, so you're
Maybe if I go in
rebelling.
the mirror and
You had
just-
Yeah,
She
I've
ended up-
become a yeller as well, and I go from 0 to 100, I see red, and there's no time for breathing, I don't even have
Okay,
that.
yes,
thought.
yeah, because sometimes your mental is gone, yeah,
Just
yeah,
go
yeah.
like this.
Yeah.
So I started wearing a rubber band
Yeah.
around my wrist,
Mhm.
Huh.
and I learned this years ago, before I had kids, about breaking bad behaviors. You can like ding the rubber band, and it's sort of like a little ounce of pain. to
I've
help
heard of
you.
it.
So I don't even get to that point. I wear the rubber band, and I just have to look at it or feel it, and it calms me down. I don't yell. It
You
intervenes.
associate it with, yeah.
It's amazing. I just have to
That
remember
is-
to wear the rubber band.
Right.
I'm just like a household one, you know, and it's been great. So it just helps me to calm down and
Yeah,
not
react
Not
as
react,
quickly.
yeah,
Yeah, and
it's
get
there.
that amygdala back
I think I
in
can.
line. The other thing too is temperature. So if you splash cold water on your face, like if you're in the kitchen and they're really, that can really help, or even holding an ice cube.
Okay.
It can lower your emotional temperature. It can get you out of your emotion response and back to that prefrontal cortex.
Okay.
So even just temperature change can do that.
Thank you.
That's a suggestion, yeah.
I have a couple of questions. So the first one is the part that, okay, given choices. I have, my son has a lot of trouble with this. I've tried it many times. It's like any choice I give, he just wants to push back on because he wants to be in control all the time. So it doesn't matter if I give him 2 choices, 5 choices, he always wants something else. So do you have suggestions for a child that's like that? Like what?
I just think you stay just firm on these are the choices, and then just don't entertain in the power struggle, because I think that's what he's looking for, is like to kind of.
Constantly looking for the
Yeah.
power struggle.
And I would probably only
Why?
give 2 choices.
Yeah,
I wouldn't
and
give
then-
5. I would only give 2 that you're comfortable with, and then if he's not,
And say, come back to me when
yeah,
you
these are
make
the
the decision.
choices. That's not one of the choices. I know
Okay.
you want it to be, it's not
And
right
it
now.
may not, this may not go perfectly, but
Right.
at some point, if you kind of walk away, at some point he probably still wants to engage you in that conversation.
Right.
he's trying to break you, make you stressed.
You know, kids
He's
have
figured
multiple
out how to,
personalities.
yeah. And how old is he? Just a,
4.
okay, yeah.
And then the other question is, I've also tried to do some of the, like, you know, when we're having the bad behavior, talking to them, validating their feelings, having the cool down as opposed to the timeout. And my husband really says that this is reinforcing bad behavior. He doesn't do the reading and the listening to talks and stuff like that. But it's kind of like, I'll try and tell him about like what we discussed today, but like can you give me like a soundbite to give him about like why that is not reinforcing bad behavior? Like, is it so simple enough as saying like, at this age, their brains just don't work that way?
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay.
yes, and they respond to kindness and firmness more than punishment. And
Okay.
punishment is just gonna make them feel
It's
bad about
detrimental,
themselves.
you know, to
Okay.
their, and it's actually will become more of a problem for us to parent him or her if we keep allowing, you know, because I think I've heard this from parents, what are they gonna rule the house and they
Right.
get
Yeah,
no
yes,
discipline or
yes.
consequences
That's
and,
exactly
you know.
what I get.
Yes,
Yeah, and I, that is a school of thought of a lot of, you know, parents, again, it goes back to like how they were raised.
Right, it's the.
And they think, well, I'm fine, so, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we're living in a different time, I mean, it's, our culture is so different. You have, oh wait, I think you had a question.
I just wanna say one
Oh,
more
sorry.
thing. If you go on our resource page and you even
It's a
print out one
great
of the
resource
articles,
page, yeah.
they're short.
Okay.
So even if you presented and just said, just read this,
Okay.
and
'Cause
it may not work to change his mind,
I
but
think the
if
one
there's
that,
like something in writing that,
Yeah,
like a
totally.
I
psychologist
think
said.
the one that, the handout you're taking, I think the website is Aha Parenting.
Yeah,
You
and I
can
brought
probably
that,
grab
it's on
a
there.
couple of, just to say, it's actually
It's
detrimental.
research-based.
It's,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
that it's
Okay.
really, really terrible for them, and it creates shame. I know that you had a, did you have another question? No, okay.
Thank you, Sarah.
No, it wasn't really a question, but it was something I learned like a couple years ago. But it was like when you're gonna flip a lid, or like your kid's gonna flip a lid, or they did flip, give them a drink. Or have them lay flat for like between a minute and 3 minutes, depending like on the age and stuff, because that makes their body like kind of like regulate
I
again.
wonder if it's something like
And
cortisol
stuff,
or,
yeah,
yeah.
so usually, especially with my older one, because he gets very angry like easily, but like giving him a cold drink, it's like, oh, I can't even talk now.
Yeah.
And that could be
usually-
something
You
that she
lower
was
the
saying
emotional
with the,
temperature.
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
temperature, yeah, I
Usually
bet
helps.
that's,
And lying
It
flat,
helps me too.
yeah.
like
Or
when they're
sometimes
lying
instead of
flat,
yelling, I go and I like whisper really angry at
when they're lying
In a
flat,
pillow.
sometimes
Yeah.
they can see their stomach rising. If you put like a stuffed animal on their stomach and you say, if you breathe in through your nose, watch the stuffed animal rise, and it just helps them regulate their breathing a little bit. It's another visual.
I know that we had one and then you had one, but do we,
Gotta end up.
all right, 3 more, so it's, okay, so you had a question?
I was just gonna jump on with the husband and ask a question, if you guys ever videotape these, because I feel like it would be really helpful if you
Yes.
have something like this videotaped.
Yeah.
I think it would be
It's
good to get.
being
other parents-
videotaped now.
Oh,
And
it
so-
is?
Yes, yes.
Maybe
I said it in the
We'll cut
beginning.
it off when he hears your voice.
Yeah.
I will say my name. Won't see you.
So it will be on our website under past videos of past presentations, and then also it's on our Facebook page. It lives on there, so yes.
Do you have any quick suggestions on how, I can see my 3-year-old saying no to the time in, like, no, I don't wanna do that, even if his favorite stuffed animal or blanket's there. Do you have any suggestions on?
You know,
Getting them to.
Yeah, getting him to think it's a good
well, a time
idea.
in could be, let's like kind of getting back to that diversion, or let's maybe take a walk outside
Yeah, it
again.
doesn't
We
have to
have
be a
beautiful
place.
weather right now, do that as often as you can, you know, if it's, cause I think you wanna get them off of the, you know, let's look at the color of the leaves, you know, just out of that power struggle, changing what's, cause we don't feel good about it, they don't, you know,
Yeah.
and I think,
Yep. And I think anytime you can use their 5 senses when you're diverting them. You know, I have this exercise that I say, name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can touch, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste.
that
And
could
it
even be
brings them
something you try, just
again, it's a
in that
grounding.
moment, and that will, you'll spend the time, but
Yeah.
you'll,
So it may not be the
and it's
special
mindfulness,
place.
really, I mean,
Right.
it's, that's essentially, and then I think, Mr.
Okay, one
Yeah,
more.
any quick ideas on how to change past behavior? Like, we were a big family of like kind of threatening things, like, oh, you're gonna lose your TV time, no donut unless you behave well after this thing. And so we've tried to kind of switch that recently, and with my older one, I think she's kind of set in her ways. She doesn't really listen until it gets escalated. Any thoughts on how to not do the
I
bribery
think
thing?
you can, and we were saying, but engaging them and like what would be an incentive, you know, what should, and maybe do this not in that moment, come up with if you have a family meeting or that's, you know, takes place maybe on a Sunday, or what are some consequences? Because I've heard this for years, that kids will come up with like almost worse consequences for themselves than we ever would. So give, you know, maybe ask her to come up with those and then be ready to kind of, if you need to dole that out.
And say to her, remember you agreed to this, right, you know, so.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, thank you guys
Thank you.
very
We
much.
can hang
Please
around.
fill out those evaluations. Yes, take care. Oh, and those cards, we were gonna read, what was
Sorry.
on the cards, we ran out of time. So, I will ask you not to take them, but if you wanna take a picture, if you like anything that's on the card, it's just sort of those same tips that we talked about. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.